Fires on the front lawn, Nick. It was just me.
Shut up, Greg. Anyway, hey there, beer tubers. Welcome back to Beer Analysis 101 with your host, Maxwell Starr, and Greg. He won't shut up or he'll get booted.
Nah, you wouldn't.
And tonight we're here with you with this week's beer, which is part 2 of Macrovember, Labatt Blue. We're doing. First and foremost, though, let's get down to who's with us tonight. And we'll start off with Mr. Redbeard. How you doing, Mr. No Beard?
I'm doing all right. How's everybody here doing? What be going down, people of the world? Hashtag Movember. Support the cause, please. Much appreciated.
If you want to post your thing in the chat, or you want me to your Mo space or whatever.
I don't think I have moderator status, so I don't know if I can. But
well, send it to me in the chat here, and I'll post it. Anyway, move it right along. We've got another one with a great big beard on, or at least a very impressive one. We got Mr. Matt of Massive Beer Reviews. Hey, Matt, I haven't seen you in a bit. What's going on?
Yeah, it's been crazy, life and stuff and things. But, I see Labatt Blue, I come a running. That's how life
not?
is.
I come a rummin'?
Yeah,
rum and rum.
As in you'd rather drink rum instead?
We'll see.
Looks like he's got a giant can, too, right beside his head.
I have the giant of all the cans. Thank you very much.
That's a huge can if it's almost the size as you.
Mm.
Yeah. Anyway, moving right along to the other one who hasn't been with us for a while, Mr. Chris Lezak of On the 10th.
I'm always here. In spirit. I'm always here. Life gets in the way. Sometimes you got to make appearances. Sometimes you can't make it. But I made it today, so thanks for having me.
Well, at least you've had a valid excuse for not being with us the last several weeks, but we'll live. Our hearts will go on. All right. And speaking of our hearts going on, hey, Greg.
Nick, I just want to say there is no valid excuse, and if it meant missing Beer Analysis 101, I'd miss my own wedding. That's how much you mean to me, Nick. That's how much you mean.
Wasn't it like? Didn't you get married the same day as the Albino Beer Fest, or was
no? We actually moved the same day. We moved into our current place the same day as the very first Albino Rhino Beer Fest.
Oh,
but that was before I fell in love with you, Nick. I didn't know how special you were to me back then.
All right, moving right along to Mr. Ashley Sexton. How are you doing tonight, Mr. Ash Sexton of Ash? That was a Sexton Beer Brewing, not actually a brewery.
That was really
homebrew.
That was the best intro ever.
That started off great, and then it just got awkward. And I'm weirded out by the vibe today. Everyone's so lovey-dovey, man. Let's just get through this shitty beer and then start hurling insults at each other.
Well, we got to keep positive thoughts if we're getting into Labatt Blue. Yay. All right, so I might as well get on to my blurb about the history, which probably came out written a little longer than I thought it was going to be. But everybody gather around while I read the story about Labatt. Labatt began in 1833 when John Kinder Labatt immigrated to Canada from his native Ireland. Working initially as a farmer near London in Upper Canada, today's Ontario, as a farmer he became well known and successful for his prize-winning malting barley. In 1847, he invested in a brewery with brewer Samuel Eccles and founded the Labatt and Eccles Brewery. On Eccles' retirement in 1853, Labatt acquired the rest of the brewery, first renaming it to the London Brewery, then later to John Labatt's Brewery, running with his sons Ephraim, Robert, and John. Thanks to the advent of shipping by railroad, Labatt's beers began shipping to Toronto, Montreal, and the Maritimes. As Ephraim and Robert later moved on to their own brewing ventures, Labatt's third son, John Labatt II, became the brewmaster in 1864 at the age of only 26 years old. John II had apprenticed at a brewery in Wheeling, West Virginia, and this experience led to the creation of their IPA, Labatt's first beer to win an international appeal, winning honors at the Canada Exposition in Ottawa, International Centennial in Philadelphia, the Exposition in Australia, and the International Exposition in France. John K. Labatt died 2 years later in 1866, leaving control to his wife Eliza, who formed a partnership with John II and renaming the brewery to Labatt & Co. John II would eventually buy out his mother's share in 1872. In 1900, his sons John III and Hugh Labatt entered the company. John II would incorporate the company into John Labatt Limited in 1911. Control passed to John Labatt III after his father's death in 1915. By the turn of the century, growing temperance movement in the late 1800s began to manifest itself, with prohibition spreading across Canada, starting with Prince Edward Island in 1901. In 1916, Ontario also introduced prohibition, ultimately decimating the province's brewing industry, which consisted of 65 Ontario breweries at the time. Labatt managed to survive by brewing the 2% temperance ale, as well as exports to the United States, but in 1919, prohibition began in the U.S., damaging the industry even further. By the time prohibition was repealed in Ontario in 1926, only 15 breweries in the province remained. John II and his brother Hugh Labatt would continue running the brewery for several decades. In 1950, to celebrate their 50th anniversary of their partnership, Labatt introduced an anniversary ale, Labatt 50. Light ale that quickly became Canada's best-selling ale. Later that same year, Hugh Labatt traveled to Pilsen, Czechoslovakia, and learned how to perfect his recipe for the Pilsner style of beer, a much lighter, crisper, and refreshing beer than what was found in Canada at the time. And Labatt introduced their Pilsner lager to the Ontario market in 1951. The 1950s were a hard time for Labatt, despite their successes. John Labatt II passed away in John Labatt III passed away in 1952. How unprofessional of me. With control passing to Hugh until his own death in 1956, which ended the Labatt family involvement in management. Control of the business passed to W.H.R. Jarvis, who would himself die of a heart attack during a board meeting in the early 1960s. Fun. Anyway, 1956, Labatt Pilsner was introduced to Manitoba, where it soon became very popular, thanks due in part of the Blue Label and Labatt's sponsorship of Winnipeg's CFL team, Canadian Football League, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Fans of the team adopted it as their official beer and gave it the name Blue, which the name stuck and was eventually trademarked as the beer's name in the 1960s. So that's the origin of the name, Winnipeg Blue Bombers. In 1971, Labatt acquired Oland & Sons Limited from Halifax, Nova Scotia, acquiring the Oland and Alexander Keith brands. In 1976, a consortium that included a 45% stake from Labatt purchased a Major League Baseball team expansion founding the Toronto Blue Jays, Canada's first and currently only Major League Baseball team. At around the same time, the investment holding company, Brascan Limited, had gradually been building up to a 41% stake in Labatt. Labatt Blue became Canada's best-selling lager beer in 1979, a position that held for 2 decades before dropping behind Budweiser and Molson Canadian. In 1987, Labatt purchased the Latrobe Brewing Company of Pennsylvania, brewers the American classic Rolling Rock. A year later, Labatt began brewing Danish lagers, Carlsberg and Carlsberg Light, under a license for the North American market, followed by acquiring a 77.5% stake in the Italian brewer Birra Moretti in 1989. In 1989, Sidney Oland of the Halifax Oland brewing family became president of Labatt's. The Oland sought to end this diversification of the company into the other industries they were into, the wine, food, and dairy industries, to focus solely on brewing operations. This trend can continue under his successor George Taylor in 1992 with a move towards better marketing and new products such as Labatt Genuine Draft, Labatt Ice, remember those Michael Ironside commercials, and the budget beer Labatt Wildcat that came out in 1993. Labatt's entertainment interests also enjoyed success with the Toronto Blue Jays winning back-to-back World Series championships in the early 90s, 92 and 93. However, in 1993, Brascan Limited sold its stake in the company, leaving the company vulnerable to a hostile takeover. This wasn't helped by a $720 million Canadian purchase of 22% stake in July 1994 of Cervecería Cuauhtémoc Moctezuma, the brewers of Tecate and Dos Equis. At the same time, measures to prevent a hostile takeover by the board were rejected by shareholders, and shareholders demanded the divestment of Labatt from its entertainment interests, which at the time also included major stakes in the CFL's Toronto Argonauts, the Sky Dome Stadium, and a Discovery Channel. wide-ranging items here. Adding more fuel to the fire, the Mexican peso collapsed in late 1994, forcing Labatt to write off $300 million on their Cervecería Cuauhtémoc Moctezuma purchase. In May 1995, Toronto-based Onyx Corp made a $2.3 billion hostile takeover offer, which was rejected as too low by Labatt's management. A legal suit against the takeover only succeeded in buying Labatt time. In the following June, Labatt agreed to be bought by Belgian brewery Interbrew, makers of Stella Artois, effectively ending Labatt as an independent company. In 2004, Interbrew was merged with Brazilian brewer Ambev and became InBev. Big stretch there. And then it merged with U.S. brewery Anheuser-Busch in 2008, becoming what we know today as AB InBev. In 2009, as part of antitrust proceedings after the merger, AB InBev sold the license to brew Labatt beers to Labatt USA, a subsidiary of North American Breweries of Rochester, New York, and is now an independent operation from the Canadian side. This sale did not include the brands Kokanee or Alexander Keith's, which are still brewed by Anheuser-Busch in the States. Anyway, so other beers from Labatt include the aforementioned Labatt 50 Ale and Wildcat, Maximum Ice, the Alexander Keith's lineup of beers, Rolling Rock. You can go even further into Budweiser's beers. There's just too many to name. Labatt Blue is a premium Pilsner, which is 5.0% ABV, or 4.9 in some markets. A Pilsner style lager. Labatt Blue has won some awards, including a silver medal at the International Lager category at the 1998 Brewing Industry International Awards. Been a while, Labatt. All right, so I'll catch my breath while somebody reads the comments. Redbeard, you want to read the comments?
Sure. Speaking of comments, my link is in the side chat if you want to post that. Drunken One. Oh my God, it's on now. Eric Gilbert's here, says cheers. Chris was very impressed by the length of the description of Blue that you read. Drunken One says, yup, and the more you know, hence Chris's little gif he was playing there. Greg preemptively asks, what's next week's beer? Eric Gilbert, the history is definitely more interesting than Blue. And Eric Gilbert, 50 baby, and cheers. That's my link to donate to Movember.
There you go. Anyway, you can keep talking. What's your history with Blue?
Haven't had a lot. I actually tried to get Marcel to come on tonight because it was a beer that he used to drink all the time. Myself, I was never really a big fan of it, but if it's something somebody offers me and that's all there is, I'll have one now and then, but really not a beer I've had a lot of compared to other like Bud or Coors Light. Bud, Coors Light, and Carling are probably the top macros I've had. And Blue would be down even below a couple other ones I can't think of right now. So, yeah.
Nice. All right, Matt, what's your history?
It's a very specific history. I think this might be the first time I've ever bought a can for myself, ever. Or basically, my best friend, the best man at my wedding, he's not a beer guy, and more times than not, if he's out and about, he's gonna order a Labatt. So like our corner bar where I would go and just kind of sit and have some beers, regardless of it being good beers or not, or his house or out and about, he would order a beer and just get me one. And it would, whatever he ordered, he'd always ask me, what do you want? I'm like, whatever you're getting. And he would give me a Labatt Blue. So I've had it multiple times over multiple years with him. So my history is friendship. That's the weird part about this beer, is that it's not a beer that I've ever bought for myself. It's not a beer that I would ever buy for myself consciously, but whenever I drink it, I actually get a little bit happy, just because it reminds me of hanging out with my best friend.
Nice.
That's pretty cool in its own right. It's kind of like, yeah, you could also say that you've had this beer numerous times, but never by choice.
True. So you could say it's more like sodomy. So I mean, it depends on your perspective.
That is always a choice.
All right. Speaking of choices, let's move on to Chris.
Oh, how many times have I had this beer? Many, many, many times. This was it wasn't a beer of choice for me back in the days before my experience with craft beers and stuff like that. But you have a handful. I've bought it a few times. You always go through those macro phases because of all the your palates change, right? But I've had it since I was 19 years old, or just to keep it legal. You go back and forth between macro beers before the craft beer scene anyway for me. So back and forth. That's basically what it was. And I'll tell you. Oh, I'll give you guys a little bit of a spoiler, I guess. I prefer this beer in cans over bottles, and I don't know why, but it's for me. It seems to be a little bit more refreshing for me on this one. But other than that, my history of this, I've had it many times, and that's it. And everyone probably here has had this beer. I mean, I would be surprised if nobody hasn't had this beer before. But that's it. That's my history. I drank it. Okay, awkward silence.
Cool story.
Good
bro.
times. Good times.
Yeah. All right. So moving right along over to Mr. Greg.
Did you even hear what I said, Nick?
Yes,
Do you even want to repeat?
We heard
I
what you said.
I'm just kidding.
I heard what you said.
I got two things to say in response to Chris. Number one, yes, I have had it before, but I have very seldomly had this beer before. I think it's possibly my third time drinking it, or at least since I've been aware of what beers I'm drinking. I may have drinking some shit in the past. I don't know. So, Chris, I just want to say you've lost a lot of weight, and I hope it's because you're working out and not because you have a disease or anything, because you look good. We're keeping the love going.
It's all my aids.
We're keeping
Thank you.
Oh, wow. I'm glad they're helping you. Why not? Help you with the bench, weightlifting, all that shit. Anyways, I have not had this beer a lot of times. It's one of those things. I mean, this is like what I like to call a wedding venue beer, and most wedding venues don't seem to ever have this. They have Budweiser, or they have Molson Canadian, or one or the other. So this is not something I go out of my way to get. I think I bought a can once just out of curiosity to try it. So I've tried sort of all the big macros. And sort of my thought. Oh wait, are we on thoughts yet? No, we're not on thoughts yet. So I'm not going to tell you my thoughts on it. But yeah, basically, I don't have a whole ton of history with it. It's, to my knowledge, probably my third, maybe fourth time having it. But who knows what you do when you're drunk? Sometimes, you never know who you wake up with. Sometimes it's a blue.
You make it sound like a one-night stand by saying you never know what you'll wake up with.
Well, sometimes you go back to a one-night stand, and then you're like, I shouldn't have done this, but you do it anyway because
It's that dirty bar hopping evening of beers.
Sometimes you just don't know where your mouth's been.
Dear God. All right. Ashley, what's your history with Labatt Blue?
I have consumed gallons upon gallons upon gallons of this stuff back in the heyday of college and whatnot. So probably have, I'll be honest, this is probably the first time I've ever actually had it in a glass. Anytime
Nice.
I've ever had it, it's always been in a bottle or a can at the bar. So yeah, I mean, I probably haven't had it in a few years. I certainly haven't purchased it for myself in the last few years, but man, back in the college days and back in the bachelor days, man, yeah, this was probably the one I would go to all the time. So yes, I've drank a fair amount of this fine Canadian lager.
Yay.
It is a Pilsner. Mine doesn't even say anything besides blue and brewers. Quality brewing since 1847. It does not anywhere. It says beer. It does not say what kind of style or anything on the can, which is really, really odd to me.
He used to say Canada's Pilsner on the side of the can.
But yeah, the one that
Mine
Matt's
says it
got
right
there. Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, I can show you my beer review was number 75 on my channel. You can even see the can says
Yeah, same thing.
It's back
That's
in
funny.
2011. Anyway, sorry, we interrupted Ash there.
My bad. Sorry.
No, I was done.
That's what I thought. I didn't want to.
I've had this quite a bit, just not in a long time and never in a glass. So there we go.
All right, so my personal history. You know what? This wasn't my favorite lager. Like when I was first learning how to drink back in my early 20s and late teens, I had one can of this that a friend of mine had smuggled out of his dad's fridge. And we drank it, and compared to other beers that we were drinking at the time, like Canadian or or Budweiser or something along those lines. We didn't like this one as much. There was some weird. We didn't like how bitter it was in comparison, and they get back to that. It's probably normal for the course when it came to like a Pilsner, because the more pronounced hoppiness to it. But later on, when I started trying in more and more beers, I don't think I actually went and bought a Labatt Blue again until I did my review, and contrary, like if you look at review number 25, you'll actually see where it says re-review on the title. And that's because the first time I reviewed it, I think it was actually like more closer to around review number 50 or something. And I did a review where I got pissed off at the whole fact that they called it Canada's Pilsner, and yet it's a shitty Pilsner when you compare it to the likes of Pilsner Urquell or Warsteiner. I actually in the review did a rage quit where I crushed the can and threw it, which is a emotional outburst I don't usually do on my channel.
Just like Redbeard did.
Yeah, Redbeard's pissed off because he doesn't like my opinion of it, but it's my opinion, and he wants all that Movember money.
Trademark, Nick. Thank you.
I apologize. My internet's being weird.
Yeah, sorry.
Redbeard, please be more.
I'll just keep talking. I'll keep talking anyway. So yeah, like was it my original review got negative response from Jay of Louisiana Beer Reviews.
Oh,
him.
Shocker.
Yes. Yeah, shocker. And I think at one point we had a disagreement. I agreed to actually do another review, and my opinion didn't change. I was a little nicer to it, but overall, I just gave it a bare pass, like 2.5 out of 5. Back in and I don't think I've actually had a blue since until earlier this year when we were talking about stuff we could do for beer analysis, and I bought an 8-pack. And I hate. I don't want to get too much into what I think of this too soon, but let's just say that I bought that 8-pack a few months ago, and I gave most of them away. And all right, so let's not like it that too deep, and then we'll just know where this is going. Let's move over to the comments to see if we actually have any.
There's a few since before. Last one would have been my Movember link. Anybody new, feel free to donate to the cause. Beer by the Numbers is here. It says, hello all, cheers.
What's up, Ryan?
Says hello. Eric Gilbert says he's in McAllen's Employees Movember group. Solid connection to beers, of course. That's pretty awesome. Then a bunch of blah, blah, blah. Labatt Best Import, I'm assuming, to Ohio is what Pulpo Jojo 7 is trying to say. Rod J is then here. Cheers, chaps.
That's not
Rod.
Anymore.
Eric, his most drank beers, OV, Crystal, 50, and Blue. And then it's through Facebook group. Ashley, go back and sign up every year for the Movember thing. Thanks again for the link again. And Rod J, what's up? Chris, my friend, out of witness protection?
No, I'm still in it.
He's out of something.
All right, there you go.
Oh,
One says hello to Rod.
Yeah, go back to what Eric Gilbert said
Red
about one of his most drank beers was 50. I actually didn't mind 50 back when I had it. I haven't had it since, but back when I did have it, I actually really liked it.
That's a future
BA. Well, it is, because I actually sent one to Lee, and he still got the can.
Good.
And I've got a can. We need to do that maybe in a month or so. Anyway, moving right along to final thoughts. Let's start with Redbeard.
I don't mind it. It's okay, but as far as like a nice, good Pilsner, it's not really. It's just kind of, I don't know. Like it's.
To be fair, they don't. Well, at least on my can, they don't call it a Pilsner anywhere that I
True.
can see. So
mine either. Mine just says beer, like I said before. It used to say Pilsner though, like other people pointed out. So I know that's what it is technically supposed to be. But I don't know. It's like I'm going to go 6s all around. I don't hate it, but I don't enjoy it enough to go out and purchase it. Like there's nothing really going on. I like my beer to have some semblance of hoppiness or malt forward tastiness or adjunct fruity flavor, even something going on that makes me want to come back to it. And this just really doesn't. It's something you can keep in your fridge along with some Canadian, some Buds, some fucking Coors Light, and some Carling and other just kind of beers that random people come over, you want a beer, here's some beer you might enjoy, kind of thing, if they don't like craft beer. So I just kind of put it in that same clumped together general decent macro beer category, I guess. So yeah, good times.
Nice. All right, moving right along to I believe Matt is next.
It's neither inspiring nor negative. There's nothing off about the beer. It's not like there's no off flavors or anything like that you could be like, okay, this is wrong about the beer as far as how it's made, but it's also there's nothing that's going to make you happy about it or inspired about it. You know what I mean? It's a tepid pool of water. You know, it is what it is, and it's meant to be drank. It's meant to be drank in copious amounts, and it is what it is. Now I have a personal attachment to it, so it ends up being something that means a little bit more to me. But it's not that doesn't make the beer better. My attachment is the reason why the beer is better for me, as opposed to a beer being better because so it's not negative, and that's off. I mean, the worst thing about it, if I was going to pull out a negative, is that it's slightly kind of corny, sweet, like syrupy, sweet, corny, a little bit. Out. That's what kind of separates it from being a good Pilsner as opposed to a mediocre or generic or not even a Pilsner. But it is what it is. I mean, it'll get you turned. And if you're somewhere and you know what this actually reminds me of is that if you're way too drunk and you shouldn't be drinking anymore and you want to have 5 more beers, that's what this would be. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like you're drinking. This is what a really good beer tastes like. Even go next step further. If you're drinking beers you shouldn't be drinking, this is what they all taste like after having 37 beers. This is after the Albino Rhino share. This is like we know we're not tasting anything anymore. We're just drinking it because we're drinking it. That's what the beer is. Done.
Randomly, anybody here heard of
Give
the
your scores,
so,
give your
Matt.
scores, by the way.
Sorry.
What?
We need some scores from you, Matt, for style.
Oh. To style I'm gonna base it off a Pilsner because that's what it says in my can. It's out of 10. It would be a 3, and personal enjoyment out of 10. I would put it at like a 6.5.
Huh? I feel like I may have overscored the style. Random side note, really quick. Anybody hear about the blue Citra coming out? Or they seem to have dry hopped blue with Citra and Mosaic hops.
We can talk of that blasphemy
Yeah,
afterwards.
we'll
We'll see
Terrible.
that later.
Terrible
Just-
blasphemy.
Alrighty,
All right, my turn.
Chris.
Like I
Your
said in the history of this beer, I enjoy this beer a lot better in cans than I do in bottles. I don't know what the fuck Labatt's doing with their bottles or whatever. I find that in cans, this beer tastes a lot more refreshing, ice cold. Okay, we'll get to that in a minute. Than in bottles. With that being said, with the ice cold thing, I have a 740 milliliter can here that I picked up. It cost me $3 and fucking something cents. I can't remember. $3.10.
High roller over here.
Well,
A
you
big
know,
spender.
I didn't want to buy a big ass can like this. I actually wanted to buy a 473 or 16 fluid ounce can, and I couldn't find one on its own where I went. And I was not gonna buy a case or a multi-pack of this. So I'm like, okay, I'll buy the 740. So I did, and I made sure it was ice cold before I even cracked it open today, and it was. And like Matt was saying earlier, it is not offensive whatsoever. This beer is drinkable, it's poundable until it gets warm. And then once this beer gets warm, it doesn't taste as good as it did when you first drank it ice cold, only because the offensive parts of it do start coming out, which would be the corn syrup and the syrupiness that Matt was talking about. It actually starts coming out more once it gets warmed up. And with that being said, you know what? It's a beer you can pound down. I mean, a year ago, I untapped this one because I don't like to untap multiple entries of the same beer because whatever, once I untap it once, whatever. So I checked back on my untapped on this one a year ago when I finally untapped it. I gave it a 2.5 or 2.75 out of 5 on untapped. And it was from a bottle because I took a picture of it like I do with every beer I try to untap. And then that one was actually, I think, to quote what I said was no, just no on that beer. And now drinking this one out of the can, ice cold, It's actually not offensive, and it's actually quite refreshing. I'll tell you right now. It's getting warmer, but this is all I got left of it, of that 740. So this will be like 2 more sips, and it's
Straight
done.
down the hatch.
And it's done, right? So for style as a Pilsner, it's more of a lager. I don't care what anyone says. This is not a Pilsner. I don't see any Pilsner qualities coming off this thing at all, in my own opinion anyway. I don't see what I did there. So for a Pilsner, I'm going to go down in the low end of this one. I'm going to give it a 3.5 out of 10 on the style. And with my overall enjoyment, hey, the first 3/4 of the can was not bad. And we're going to see how this is going to end up being. But I'm going to say for my overall enjoyment, I'll give it a 7. I'll give it a 7 out of 10. I don't mind this. You can drink this as long as I get it handed to me ice cold. Then we're good to go.
I feel like you pretty much just copied Matt for that.
Oh,
Jesus.
oh well.
I'm just kidding. I'm just
Argued
kidding.
stretch considering it's the same damn beer.
All
All right. Right. Okay. So what did you say for ratings again, Chris?
3.5 and 7.
3.5 and 7. 7 overall.
Yeah.
Cool.
Jesus Christ.
Wow. Very, very impressive.
Actually,
By far the best. I rate that a 10 out of 10. Personally.
Yeah,
That was
Jamie,
glorious.
we're gonna need you to cut that and frame it and make it real nice. Of Nick just
We'll
belching my
just
name.
do this jump cut afterwards. Like,
Exactly.
what do you think, Greg?
I don't think I'm going to say anything too interesting about this beer. Like I say, this isn't a beer I traditionally grew up with. Like, back in the days of just drinking whatever the fuck was in my dad's fridge. It was usually Molson Canadian or Coors Light or something like this. This is not something that was ever really around the house. Never really had much opportunity to drink it. To me, sort of the big beers, sort of your Molson Canadian, your Budweiser, your Labatt Blue. This is the one that sort of sits in the middle for me. I prefer Budweiser to this marginally, but I prefer this to Molson Canadian by like 100 million dead hookers. Sorry to bring Paul into this. It's like this is sort of on a completely other level. Not that I'm saying this is particularly good, but compared to the shit that is Molson Canadian, then I'm actually still upset that I overrated that at 3 out of 10. And I want to take my rating back. I want to review that again, Nick. Please let us do it again.
Too late. Nope.
So I don't know. To me, I'm not going to give it a Pilsner because I don't feel it's fair to rate something as a Pilsner that doesn't claim it's a Pilsner, even though I know it used to. But I mean, if you go by what beers used to claim they were, that's another thing.
It's like Alexander IPA.
Yeah, well, I don't know if that still lists itself as an IPA. If it does, then I feel it's right to rate it as one.
Anyway, we're off topic. Go ahead.
Does it? Anyway, it doesn't say it's a Pilsner. If this was a Pilsner, it'd be like a 1 out of 10. As a lager, which is how I'm going to rate it, it's a 5 out of 10. It's decent. I don't particularly have an issue with it. It's certainly not one of the better lagers I've had, but I'm almost done, and I wasn't offended by it. It was very cold, and it didn't bother me. I could see myself, bless you.
Yeah, that was great.
I could. Exactly what Matt said is 100% on point. This is a beer that you've already had too many of the good beers, and you just want to drink 7 more beers. You could drink 7 more of this, and it's pretty solid on that. So 5 out of 5. Actually, for a overall enjoyment, I'm gonna go 6 on it. It's good. It's a little bit better than passable for me. It's on the low level of good, where for what it is, it's not bad. And I would have no problem. Again, I wouldn't go out of my way to ever buy this. But if I'm at Ashley Sexton's house and he just brewed up a whole bunch of this stuff, because I know he's got the recipe, and he served it to me in authentic cans, or if I was at a wedding, which is my favorite place to drink shitty beers, because that's often all they serve, I would definitely reach for this over some other junk that they might have there, especially since every single wedding has Molson Canadian.
Mm-hmm. All right, Ash.
I do have the recipe for this, and I am not giving it out.
It's a secret.
It's a fucking secret. I I'm not really going to add too much to this. This is very much a nostalgia beer for me. This is a beer that you drink, and it sort of brings you back to the day where you drank a whole bunch of this type of shit. I'm not going to rank this as it's a Pilsner. It doesn't say so on the can. I'm going to do so as just a generic macro lager. The one thing I will say that they did well with this beer is that it's got a very soft mouthfeel to it. So you can really just slam the shit out of this beer because there's like very little carbonation. Like it's not prickly or anything like that. So you can slam back that can or bottle pretty fucking fast with this one. So I'm not gonna. It's not blowing me away, but it's not stopping me from wishing I actually had another one. So for it being a macro lager, inoffensive as it warms up, it's got a little corny sweetness, as does every macro lager. So it's just sort of lacking a little bit of extra bite that I would like to have in a good.
Sorry.
That's all right.
Sure.
So you know what? Actually, for just calling this a macro lager like style, I'm just gonna give this a 7 out of 10 because there's not much in the way of brewing faults or anything like that. It is what it is. For personal enjoyment, I'd drink it again. I wouldn't go out of my way to, but I'll give it a 5. I drank it pretty quick, and I'm sure if I was drunk, I'd probably drink a whole bunch more. So yeah, 5 out of 10 for personal enjoyment, 7 for style.
Nice. All right, down to my side of the story. My sentiments are actually going to pretty closely match what I think Chris said. I think this is a beer that's definitely best served cold because when it's cold, it's got this nice bready, grassy, sweet kind of taste. It's very refreshing going down at the start, but as this thing starts to warm up, the corn syrup and the cardboardiness really start to shine through, and this comes damn near unpalatable when it gets really warm and gross at the bottom of the glass. As such, I'm not a fan of blue. I just have to go ahead and admit that. I mean, I didn't like it during my review. I like it even less now. I mean, like I was always trying to say before, like I bought an 8-pack a while ago of this and gave most of it away because I don't mind drinking lager, like macro stuff. I mean, we do enough of them on this channel here, and sometimes I'll drink, like I'll buy a case of something macro-y to drink to have something to drink. When it comes to having stuff like you want to drink 7 more beers to go with the 3 good ones that you had bought, I've got better options here than Labatt Blue. I mean, I can go down and get like a 12-pack of Moosehead Pale, or not the Pale Ale, the lager, and that's a a beer that's miles better. It actually holds up well when it warms up. But for around the same price, and I can get it pretty fresh here anyway. But I'm just saying, it's like as far as macros go, I would not pick this one first by a long shot. And if there's something what really pisses me off is it's claiming, or at least used to claim, that it was a Pilsner at one point. Maybe in part I feel like it's still based on that. But even when it comes to calling this a pale lager, I feel like it's substandard. I'm going to give it, out of the style, I'm going to give it a 3.5, like what Chris gave it. But for personal enjoyment, I hate this beer. I mean, it's really hard to say like openly hate. I guess I don't openly hate it. It's just I really don't like it. And 4 to 10. That's my overall. I'm not enjoying this. Wow. Anyway, but that's me. So that's my opinion. My own opinion.
There you go. Your own move.
That's trademark. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Anyway, moving along. We got any new comments while I do the math?
Eric had said cheers red handlebars, which is kind of funny.
Handlebars.
And then Rajay says he's used Labatt's in chili and it wasn't bad at all. And I said I personally like using more of a stout beer in my chili, and Rajay says stout's much better. Agreed with me. Kind of maybe
I've used IPA in my chili before.
That'd be interesting. Depending on like the hoppiness of the IPA, that'd be interesting. Ashley said a Choco hot pepper stout would be awesome in a chili. I actually still have some of my Jacko Fire, pretty much a pumpkin stout with
undrinkable.
No, so good, man. It was the spiciest beer I've ever had in my life.
I put heroin in my chili.
Undrinkable.
It was nuts how spicy that beer was, but it was so good. Like, I loved it.
Then put it in the chili.
And then Chris says, "Bless you, Agnes." Again, yeah, I agree with that. And Jamie's here says, "Nick drops the hammer on Blue. Hashtag FU Blue."
That's too funny. You know what's funny about your history of the Labatt family?
What?
They all died making beer. So maybe,
It's not that bad.
I'm trying to think that maybe the beer was their bad luck charm. Maybe they should have went into something else. Everyone just died. This person died, took over. This person died, took over.
Well, I thought it was kind of funny that the first non-family member of the brewery was like, he dies in a board meeting. Like, he just sort of collapses dead while they're talking about sales or something.
He was that bored in a board meeting that he died.
Bored. Oh.
Yeah. That's pretty bad.
You can't even whackety schmackety do that one.
No, it's not worthy, and you can't assign a whackety schmackety do without the King of Beer Tube. It has to have Royal Ascension. Anyway, yeah. So I guess we should get started.
Somebody else earlier asked what the beer is next week. So
yeah, that did happen.
Somebody's asking what next week's beer is there, huh?
Well, I guess Nick showed me what it is.
Oh, well.
Somebody's cheating and already having it.
Well, I'm trying to wash the taste of blue out of my mouth. Yeah, so next week we're gonna do Moosehead Pale Ale.
Next week I will not be here.
Oh,
what?
Oh no! What will we do?
I'll be in Sudbury cleaning hood fans.
You gotta clean that big nickel or that big smokestack in Sudbury?
No. We don't do that.
Don't do that. I think
that got awkward.
What are the scores?
Yeah, all right, tell us the scores next, please.
The scores are for Canada's Pilsner. We've got. Let me here. I present it here. All right, so the ratings are for Canada's Pilsner. We hated it out of the style, and overall, it was a bare pass. I tried to bring it down, but
you couldn't deselect that 5.75 before presenting it.
Sweet crap.
I was gonna pick everything fucking apart.
There you go.
Nick doesn't have that kind of time. He's busy.
Not enough. I just typed it in there. That's why.
And that Labatt Blue model and logo are pretty pixelated, I gotta say.
That's because
it's an MS Paint.
Yeah, he could have copied a higher resolution.
Everything has to be in fucking 4K. Jesus.
My God,
language.
We're drinking beer, not fucking making logos.
Beer, no, we're not just drinking beer. We're drinking Labatt Blue.
It's fun to have.
What kind of quality are you expecting here?
I love you guys. You're the best.
Well then.
Yeah.
On to
the good time.
Much better.
More beer. Beer carnage.
Yeah, so we got, was it Eric Gilbert says I will be getting Moosehead Pale Ale. I can drink it. And so can I. Anyway, I guess we might as well move along. I think Chris wants to move to this later part of his evening.
Nah.
No, I'm going to be drinking this Firestone Walker Nitro Merlin.
Oh, you're sticking around. Okay.
He'll just take a brief 3-minute break, and then he'll be back.
He'll be gone for 5 minutes. And
oh, look at that! We got a 3-minute
happy life.
Taking bets on how long Chris will be gone. Taking bets.
Yeah. All right, so I will.
I'm out of here.
He's gonna go extended and take a dump just to make it seem longer.
All right. Anyway, I'm gonna go sign off here.
Keep it classy.
Tune in next week when we do Moosehead's Pale Ale. We'll catch you later. And yeah, thanks for watching. Whatever. Thanks, guys, for coming on. Blah, 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 blah.
Blah, 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 blah.
We'll be popping up shortly on an after chat.
After
You're my boy, Blue.
Much